And the first time you see all the characters, the actors dressed in the suits and interacting with each other, and it's a night shoot, and it was, stop you dead in your tracks and just kind of go, I believe this is going to work. This is fantastic.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. Turtle Mania has returned. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are returning to the big screen in the animated film Mutant Mayhem, which delivers a whole new take on the iconic heroes in a half shell. But for many Turtles fans, nothing can quite compare to the very first live-action TMNT movie. But how did the Turtles make the jump from indie comic sensations to darlings of the silver screen? What challenges did they meet along the way? Join IGN and TMNT co-creator Kevin Eastman for a look back at the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film.
Enough talk! I dream about fighting every night!
You've got a rage problem, right?
It's not a problem! Can I
The origins of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles phenomenon can be traced back to 1984, when creators Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird first got together to spearhead Mirage Studios and self-published the original TMNT comics. At that early stage, Hollywood wasn't even in consideration. Eastman and Laird simply wanted to make a living writing and drawing comics, with the first issue being funded through a combination of a tax refund and a loan from Eastman's uncle. There was no guarantee that there would ever be a second. Fortunately, the new series quickly found an audience, making it possible for Eastman and Laird to focus full-time on their new business venture. The TMNT comics grew steadily in popularity over the next several years. That was followed by the premiere of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series in late 1987 and the Playmates Toys action figure line in summer 1988. By the end of the decade, Turtle Mania was really beginning to take hold. As Eastman explains to IGN, that's when conversations about a Turtles movie really began to gather momentum.
To all of our joy and amazement that it worked. People gravitated to it and started digging the Turtles. The success of that led to discussions on a movie. And there were several offers before that we basically vetoed outright. But when a guy named Tom Gray approached us he represented a company called Golden Harvest. They were best known for some really fantastic Jackie Chan movies. They brought in the incredibly I can't say enough about how gifted and talented Steve Barron, the director, was. They brought in a writer named Todd Langdon who wrote the script, and the icing on the cake could not have been better when Steve Barron's relationship with Jim Henson, they brought in the Henson Company to create the costumes to help bring these turtle characters to life, and it was literally a perfect storm of things that lined up and allowed that opportunity to happen the way it did.
To Eastman and Laird, maintaining creative control over the project was critical. Self-publishing the TMNT comic made that level of control possible, allowing Eastman and Laird to avoid the struggles faced by so many comic book creators, like their hero Jack Kirby, who signed away control of their most famous creations.
The success of the comic, and through a series of events, people that crossed paths, agents and people that discovered the Turtles and called, there were several that we said no to or any further exploitation of the Turtles. We just didn't feel comfortable with them. But when we met our agent, and the agent through all the early years, a guy named Mark Friedman, he seemed dedicated to the commitment that Peter and I would only move forward on any Turtle project, any other entertainment form that we had full control over. We wanted, full say in what the characters looked like, what was done with them. We had approvals, and even initially he said, that'll never happen. And we said, well, then we're not interested. We were inspired by some creators that lost control of their characters through the companies they worked for years ago. That was the nature of the business, and we knew how lucky we were to own our characters, so anything that was going to be done with them that we wanted full say and approval on.
A moment to reflect.
With Golden Harvest and director Steve Barron on board, the TMNT movie started to take shape. But one thing that quickly became clear is that the movie wouldn't simply recycle the approach of the animated series, regardless of its massive popularity. The film is much more heavily inspired by the original TMNT comics, with the plot borrowing heavily from the early issues of the series. At the same time, some of the now iconic elements introduced by the cartoon, the color-coded bandanas, the turtles' love of pizza, slang like cowabunga, still made their way into the story. The film was specifically conceived as a way to draw on the best elements of both incarnations of the franchise.
But that was also Steve Barron's mandate, is that he wanted to create a film that was for all ages, kids of all ages, squarely and fairly, in that at our first meeting with him, he had actually gone through and had posted sequences from Turtles issue 1, a couple of the other issues, but in particular, we did a one-shot featuring a single turtle, Leonardo, elements of issues 10 and 11, and then he had crafted a basic concept of what the movie would be based on things and scenes from that those original comics. But he also loved the cartoon show to an element, and he felt that there was definitely room for a lot of humor, because the original comic books were much edgier. They were not hyper violent or anything like that, but they were definitely intended for an older audience. And he knew that it was a kid's film made for all audiences, but the original audience would be a younger audience.
Even though Barron envisioned an all-ages approach to the Turtles, there's no denying that the tone of the 1990 film is much darker than the animated series. That made the project a surprisingly tough sell for most Hollywood distributors. Everyone from Disney to Universal to Warner Brothers turned down the film.
Tom Gray tells a story from back in the day where he basically approached every studio and was told no by every studio because it was too bizarre, too out there, they felt it was too far a stretch as a concept, as I guess a kid's concept would go. The tone that Steve approached it as a director, but that was really kind of done more after. I think New Line had been locked in beforehand.
In the end, New Line Cinema proved to be the one studio willing to take a chance on a darker live-action Ninja Turtles movie.
But yeah, everybody shot it down. It was Bob Shea and the guys at New Line that saw an opportunity with it, certainly for the budget that it was at that time, which was around, I think it hovered under they say $7 million, but I think it was a bit less. But for the budget opportunity, they had a lot of success with Nightmare on Elm Street and things like that. But they saw an opportunity to do this.
Another hurdle facing the film was the challenge of translating the stylized, two-dimensional versions of the Turtles into three-dimensional reality. That's where Jim Henson's Creature Shop came in. Henson, in one of the final projects before his untimely death in 1990, oversaw a months-long effort to design latex suits with fully animatronic masks.
And that was a very scary time also, to put it in perspective, was that to bring these characters to life in a live-action movie, if they didn't work, the movie was done before it started. And so we were very relieved and very excited that Jim Henson agreed to come on board. I think he had some concerns with the violence and the martial arts and the things. He was definitely fully, Sesame Street and Fraggle Rock and the things that, the Muppet Show and all those things. So it was a risk for him. But when we watched the video tests and the clay sculptures, they made full-size, life-size sculptures of the Turtles in the studio out of London. And it was surreal seeing it that way and seeing the tests and the video tests, and they cast the actors and then built the suits to fit them so that the muscles work the way they should underneath. But clearly it was until Peter and I worked on the set in Wilmington, North Carolina, when they first started shooting. We went down, of course, and kind of coming around a corner into the back lot, and the first time you see all the characters, the actors dressed in the suits and interacting with each other, and it's a night shoot, and it was stop you dead in your tracks and just kind of go, I believe this is going to work. This is fantastic. They look like they've come to life the way more than we could ever have imagined.
I'd say that's pretty much a wrap. Yep. Cowabunga?
Cowabunga!
Yeah! Cowabunga!
Thanks in no small part to Henson's team, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie finally took shape. But that doesn't mean everyone had faith in the project. If 1987's Masters of the Universe movie taught us anything, it's that a popular toy line and animated series don't automatically translate to box office success. Still, Eastman managed to maintain a sense of perspective as the release date neared. He and Laird had already defied the odds by turning their small, self-published venture into worldwide craze. If the movie bombed, as some feared it might, the Ninja Turtles had still had a good run.
We'd seen, early on they were sending us, video footage of dailies and things like that. And we just felt so comfortable with it on so many levels. But it was a risk to the people that had invested a lot of money in the toys and the cartoon show, because the possibility that if it did bomb, that was kind of the end of the series. They felt, we also remember clearly that when we first started talking with our agent, Mark Friedman, he said, typically the path that an intellectual property of this type potentially can follow is you'll have an introductory year. If it sells through and it's accepted by an audience, then you'll have a kind of a boom year as a second year, and then the third year you're in the discount bins, and that's it. So the lifespan of what the Turtles could become beyond the comic book was all pie in the sky to us. We were fully still vested in the comic book, and that's where the dream came true. So all these other things, we were very hopeful, but we didn't know until it went out there what it would actually do.
In the end, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie didn't bomb. It proved to be one of the highest-grossing films of 1990, even becoming the highest-grossing independent film of all time in the process. The film helped cement the TMNT franchise as one of the dominant forces in pop culture as the 90s began. In many ways, Turtlemania reached its zenith in the 1990s, but that was also the year that began to show just what legs the franchise truly had. The heroes in a half shell wouldn't flame out like so many 80s properties before them, but had the staying power to last through the 90s and into the 21st century.
When you look at the launch in '87, sort of the peak years of the launch in '88, which propelled '89, which led to the movie, and there was the 1990 movie was such a big hit that 1990 year was exceptionally successful overall for all things Turtles. So when we started working on Turtles Movie 2 almost immediately after the release of the first one, that it was the peak, and then you sort of saw a steady, slow decline as the years went by. But by 1995, 96, we were still working on cartoon shows. There was we were about to launch a new live-action series with Saban and Fox Kids, and the fact that it kind of kept going, even our agent was a little bit of kind of scratching his head in a positive way and saying, well, it was surprising to him, and he said maybe we're looking like the Turtles could be more of an evergreen property where it could kind of continue, or have peaks and valleys like you might imagine Batman or Scooby-Doo or other properties. And to Pete and I, we were just like, it is what it is. It's been really awesome, and it's been really fun, and if it continues on, how wonderful is that? And the fact that it has, and that here we are, next year is 2024 is the 40th anniversary since the first issue came out in May of 1984. Looking back on a movie that's 35 years old, at the same time looking at a new movie that's launching with a new cartoon series, and that Courtney, my wife, and I still do 15 plus comic conventions and things of those type every year, and there's such a wonderful audience and fan base that to me is I think probably best described as humbling more than anything, is the fact that I still get to do what I wanted to do as a child, that childhood dream.
Peter and I came up with the Ninja Turtles, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, in a lot of ways out of a love of comics and out of some silliness. So late one night after watching some bad TV, feeling really silly, I did this drawing of a turtle with a mask on and nunchucks strapped to his arm.
But what do you think? Does the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie stand the test of time? Can any amount of CGI spectacle top these classic latex rubber suits? Let us know what you think in the comments. And for all things Turtles, make sure you like and subscribe to IGN wherever you watch.